We just had a 6-hour hearing in front of a magistrate judge in Tennessee about Armando Abrego Garcia and whether that criminal indictment is going to stand and whether he's going to be detained pre-trial as a result of it. The government, the Department of Justice under Donald Trump, is pushing to have him detained. His lawyers are imploring the judge to reject that, to ultimately dismiss the indictment that he pled not guilty to for human smuggling and to let him out. But I think the best result from this 6-hour hearing to manage expectations is that Armando Abrego Garcia is going to be transferred from the federal detention center to the immigration detention center. I don't think he's going to walk out the front door of the court. He's currently being detained. But let me tell you about the hearing. Very, very important for the rule of law. Remember, we're only talking about Armando Abrego Garcia because he was returned 2 Fridays ago by Donald Trump, not to comply with the Supreme Court 9-0 ruling that the Trump administration had violated Armando Abrego Garcia's habeas corpus and due process rights. Oh, no. Not to comply for several months with the orders of Judge Zinnes in Maryland to comply and to bring him home from El Salvador. No, they instead indicted him on the 28th of April with an indictment that had just been worked on just days earlier, and then use that as the ruse to bring him back, not to go back to Judge Zinnes' courtroom, to be given proper due process for his illegal removal to El Salvador, but to stand charges for human trafficking in the Middle District of Tennessee. Let me set the stage. Judge Holmes, magistrate judge, lawyers for Abrego Garcia. Finally, he's got lawyers. His mother and his wife were in the courtroom as well. His brother was willing to testify. And the number one piece of evidence that troubled the judge against Armando Abrego Garcia was the testimony and the information given by a confidential informant who, as pointed out by the lawyers for Abrego Garcia, was a 2-time felon and fined 5 times, deported from this country. And now, because he quote unquote snitched on and ratted out and made up whatever story against Abrego Garcia, he's now staying in the United States scot-free. So you see what the incentive was for him not to tell the truth. And that all troubled the judge. Let me get down to the hearing right now on Legal AF. Here's how it works in federal court. In a federal district like in Tennessee, the Middle District, magistrate judges do a lot of the day-to-day work in criminal cases. In this case, Magistrate Judge Barbara Holmes. Usually, a hearing does not go 6 hours on the issue of pretrial detention. And generally, you don't have a lot of witnesses. Although, because the acting interim U.S. attorney for Tennessee, the Middle District of Tennessee, happens to be a Democrat, who admitted during the hearing that he was sort of the last man standing, wasn't really involved with the decision to indict. In fact, the person who was involved with the decision to indict, the head of the criminal division, resigned after a 15-year career because of the indictment. Tells you all you need to know about that indictment. So that indictment came out in and around the 28th of April. But that is the exact same time that apparently the agent with Homeland Security was assigned to the case. So what, within a day of him being assigned, they concluded that there was probable cause to indict? That gave the judge a lot of pause. That Homeland Security agent took the stand. They played some body cam footage in which, from the traffic stop in November of 2022, which is what this is all based on, in which Armando Abrego Garcia was in a car without a driver's license with 9 other people in it. That's the basis of the human smuggling. Although, of course, the indictment goes much broader than that. And in it, he says, in response, where'd you come from? He says, we're coming from St. Louis into Tennessee. Turns out perhaps he was not in St. Louis. He was more likely in Texas. But in any event, the Homeland Security officer had only been investigating the case less than several days when the indictment came out. There was sharp questioning from Magistrate Judge Holmes. In fact, she admitted that she was not ready to rule even after 6 hours. She said, it's unusual not to have a ruling. It's unusual to have a 6-hour hearing. She said, but these are unusual circumstances. Her eyebrows shot up, according to court watchers, when the lawyer for Armando Abrego properly pointed out that the very basis of the indictment is a confidential informant named Hernandez Reyes, who has a rap sheet that's a mile long. that he's a 2-time convicted felon and had been deported 5 times, to which the judge stopped the defense lawyer and said, I'm sorry, how many times was that person deported? 5. So you see the incentive to lie. As the lawyer for Armando Abrego said, if I was in front of a jury, I would say this was a snitch. This is a person who's got an incentive not to tell the truth and to not be credible in order to cut a deal for themselves, because they're facing deportation to El Salvador, jail time, and the rest. So there's a tremendous incentive there not to tell the truth. And that is the entire basis for the indictment. At one point, Judge Holmes said to the lawyers for the prosecution, I'm not even sure you met the threshold to detain him pretrial. Flight risk. What flight risk? The only flight he's been on is when they illegally deported him on a plane and shoved him on a plane over a judge's order to ground that plane and sent him to El Salvador to a gulag. The only reason we know about it is his wife watched a video of him being loaded out of a van into the jail and happened to catch her husband there of the 250 men that were dumped there by Donald Trump. Best case scenario, though, let me just tell you what a win looks like. I don't think he's going to be walking out the wooden door, as we like to say in criminal defense world. I don't think so. I think at best, she will not detain him on the federal detention for crimes that he's been indicted for. But the U.S. isn't going to let him out. Just like they're not letting out, somebody who just won, a graduate student with a green card at Columbia who just won a hearing and the judge ordered him released. They're still not releasing him. And because they found another loophole, another way to retain him. So he's just going to be transferred to an immigration detention center. And then from there, Judge Zinnes is about to rule on whether she's going to continue to find the Trump administration in contempt for their failure and refusal since April the 10th to comply with her orders and those of the United States Supreme Court. So the hearing was very, you could see the lack of compelling evidence to even indict Abrego Garcia, let alone convict him. And that's the standard under the Department of Justice manual. To use your prosecutorial discretion, to invoke the tremendous weight of the power of a federal prosecutor, you have to believe that you have a probable cause to believe that you can obtain a conviction. And they don't even have that. And that's what the judge was questioning. You got a confidential informant who's a felon and somebody who's violated the immigration laws 5 times. Then they made statements out loud in court that couldn't possibly be true. That Armando Abrego Garcia's wife and the mother of his 2 children, who are both special needs, went with him, with the children, in a car for human smuggling. That doesn't even make any sense. What proof do they have of that? Who's caring for the kids at that moment? But if this is the tissues of lies, that is a foundation for the indictment, I think it's more likely than not that Judge Holmes is not going to detain him pretrial in the federal detention center related to his criminal charges. Although, as I said, he's just going to be taken on a van and brought over to immigration. But I think that's better for the Judge Zinnes case in Maryland, who's presiding over the whole due process issue, because it puts him effectively under her jurisdiction in the immigration world. Because we still have to get to the bottom of the civil rights violation, the habeas corpus violation. Donald Trump's trying to change, and his Department of Justice is trying to flip the script. Well, yes, we used the Alien Enemies Act and we illegally violated his civil rights and an order of another judge and sent him to El Salvador by accident. But we don't have to worry about due process anymore because we're going to deport him under another set of standards. That's what we're watching. I find the timeline troubling here. For the Department of Justice. I think it undermines their case. How instead of trying to comply with the Supreme Court's order on April 10th and the issues raised by Judge Zinnes on April 15th, they were instead 13 days later bringing this Homeland Security agent in, and a day or 2 after that getting the indictment. That's a problem for their case. And it's something I'm sure that Judge Holmes is focused on. I'll continue to follow it. You're on Legal AF. Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button, and wishing everyone good luck today and be safe. but be disobedient, but without being violent on No King's Day and all those marches around the country. Until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event, by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states, and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.